friends, it's Julie, and today I'm here with my March wrap-up for you guys. March actually ended up being a really good reading month for me. It was actually my best one so far this year. I was able to finish 6 things, and I really loved a few of them. But the first book that I read for the month was Faithful Place by Tana French. This is the 3rd book in her Dublin Murder Squad series. And this book was a pretty big disappointment for me. I buddy read this with Katie and Stephanie, and I know that they enjoyed it way more than I did. I was really disappointed with the mystery in this book. So in this one, we follow Detective Frank Mackey, who we met in the 2nd book, The Likeness. And this old mystery kind of resurfaces from his past involving his high school sweetheart, Rosie. So for me, what was so disappointing about this book was the mystery. I had the mystery figured out within the first, 100 pages. And this isn't the first time that I figured out, the ending to one of her books really early. But I don't know. I think I'm done with this series. It's just kind of frustrating because I really like her writing style, especially when it comes to her characters, because we really get to know the detectives in these stories. I like knowing their backstories and just feeling a connection for them, because I feel like you don't usually get that in mystery novels. And so I really like that about her books. It's just the mystery is always so predictable, and this one was so predictable that I kept waiting. I'm like, there has to be something. It can't be this. There has to be at least a little bit of a twist or something, and it just never came. So I don't know. I really don't think I'm going to be continuing on with this series anymore. I've given it a couple chances. And I really loved In the Woods, which was the 1st book in the series, but the last 2 I just haven't really enjoyed, so I think I'm done. Then the 2nd book I finished for the month was In Order to Live by Yeonmi Park, and this is her memoir about her and her mother's escape from North Korea, and this book was fantastic. I've been wanting to read it for a while, and we decided to read it for my book club, and it led to a really good discussion. This book just really opened my eyes, because I feel like I'm a little naive when it comes to how, other parts of the world work. And to be honest, I didn't know much about North Korea before I picked this book up. It was always just kind of very mysterious to me. And now, knowing some of the things that go on there, it's just crazy to think that there's a place like that in the world, that people still live that way. It just really opened my eyes up to that, as well as human trafficking. I feel like I've been living just under a rock or something. I knew that human trafficking was a big deal. I knew it was all over the world and things like that. I guess I didn't realize how close to home it is, really. I didn't know that it was such a big, it was so big here in the States as well as other parts of the world. We were talking about this at my book club, and, my sister has dealt with some of this at a high school that she works in, which is just crazy. I live in the Midwest. I live in Kansas, and and a highway that runs right through my state is a big trafficking highway because it goes through so many states. It's just like a straight, north-south shot, and this book just really opened my eyes up to a lot of things. I will say the writing in this book isn't, incredible. But then again, she's not a professional writer. She's just trying to share her story with us. And, you do kind of feel a little bit of a disconnect from her while you're reading this, because there were so many times where you're reading something that's really emotional, something really traumatic that's happening to her, but you're always kind of kept a little bit at a distance. And I think that she probably wrote it that way simply because, that's how she has to kind of process this. It's kind of like a defense mechanism. At least that's kind of what I felt as I was reading the book. I still think everyone should read this. I think that it's a really important read, and I really enjoyed it. Then the 3rd thing I finished for the month was Milk and Honey, and this is a poetry collection that I picked up from the library. I only could have it for a week because it was a limited loan, but I reread this 4 or 5 times that week that I had this. So many of these poems just connected so much with me. It got me so excited now to pick up more poetry, but this collection was just so fantastic. I have to buy a copy for my shelf. I just connected so much to so many of the poems in this collection. So many of them moved me to tears. I read so many out loud to my husband, and it was interesting because some of the poems that I connected with the most were the shortest. Like some were just like 4 lines, but the emotion in those words was just so much. Oh, I had no idea poetry could be like this, and I cannot wait to pick up more poetry collections. And then I picked up Shelter by Jung Yun, and I did a full review on this, which I will link to so you can check it out. So I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but I will say that I loved this book. This is going to be a favorite from this year, I already know. It had so much in it. It was kind of like a mystery thriller with like a lot of family drama thrown into it. I loved everything about this book. I couldn't even find anything that I didn't like. More people need to read this one. I will say something that I didn't mention in my review is there is some very adult graphic material in this book. There is some talk of rape and things like that, and I forgot to mention that in my review. So just know that going in, but this book is just seriously so fantastic. I couldn't put it down. I flew through the first like 200 pages of this book because I had to keep reading it. So definitely go and check it out if it sounds interesting to you, and definitely go check out my review so you can see what it's about. Then I picked up Wintersong by S.J. Jones, and this is a pretty popular YA book that's kind of going around right now, and I've been having a really, love-hate relationship with YA lately, but I had to pick up this book because I heard that it was a retelling of The Labyrinth. And in case you never noticed my little Jareth over here, I am a very big fan of The Labyrinth. It has been one of my favorite movies since I was a little girl. I can quote every line in the movie, and I know that I can do this because my sister and I actually went to a quote / like sing-along of this movie last year, and it was so fantastic. But when I heard that that somebody was writing a retelling of this book, I knew that I had to pick it up. And to be honest, I really enjoyed it. It wasn't perfect, but it was a pretty fun read. So in this book, we follow this young girl named Elizabeth, and when she is a young girl, she used to play in the woods with a little boy, and that little boy was actually the Goblin King. And as Elizabeth grew up, she kind of forgot about him, and then he comes back into her life when she's like 18, and he takes her sister to be his bride, and he takes their sister down into the underground. And so Elizabeth goes after them and tries to, save her sister. There's a lot more to the story. That's just kind of a loose synopsis. And this book is a very loose retelling of The Labyrinth, but there were a lot of little things, that I could pick out that, came from the movie, and I loved it. It was a really fun read. The writing was actually pretty good. I was very pleasantly surprised. It was very beautiful and kind of lyrical. I really liked that about it. It moved really quickly because it was YA, and there wasn't any insta-love, which is always a plus. I will say, there were some things I didn't particularly like about it. Number one was the main character, Elizabeth, always had to refer to herself as this ugly girl. It was just constant. She was constantly talking about how ugly she was and how pretty her sister was. And this happened so many times throughout the book. It got very annoying by the end of it. She just wouldn't let it go. I'm like, you're this really great music composer, but yet you're just so focused on your appearance and how ugly you think you are. So that was kind of annoying. As well as there is a very big musical component of this story, and at the very beginning, I liked it. I thought it was really interesting. I hadn't really read that in a book before. Things were kind of explained through music, especially like emotions and things like that. But toward the end, it did get, repetitive because it was just throughout the entire book, and she kept explaining things in the exact same way. And so just very repetitive, and I got kind of bored with it by the end of the book. But I do think that it's a pretty fun read, and I think that if you enjoy The Labyrinth, then you would probably enjoy this book. Then the last thing I read for the month was Perfect Days by Rafael Montez. And I actually heard about this book from Rachel, The Shades of Orange, and she actually did a whole review on this, which I will link to because it is fantastic. And she was the one who made me want to read this book because she said that this is one of the darkest books that she'd ever read. And Rachel reads a lot of mysteries and thrillers, so if she says something like that, I know that it's a book that I have to pick up. It really sparked an interest with me. You guys know that I enjoy a really dark story, and this one was definitely that. I have a feeling that this book is going to stick with me for a really long time. So this story is about a man named Theo. He is a very weird, strange man, and he kidnaps this woman and really bad things happen. There's some very graphic material in this book. Really just terrible things happen. I will say this book is kind of, I felt like a mixture between like You by Caroline Kepnes and Misery by Stephen King. Although Theo is not nearly as likable as Joe in You. But I do feel like it's kind of a mixture of the two books. And I would recommend this if you enjoy a very dark kidnapping story. I think that you would probably really like this if you enjoy books like that. Just be warned that there is some very, very graphic material in this one. But those are all the books that I read throughout the month of March. Please leave me a comment down below and let me know if you've read any of these books and what you thought about them, or if you read anything great in the month, you know, that I should add to my TBR. But thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you like this video. And I will see you all again very soon. Happy reading. Bye!